Now, Dave Chappelle was my GOAT. Loved a lot of his comedy and his humor. And yet, for the past, 5-6 years now, he has not stopped trying to tackle big trans. His latest special is not as bad as some of his other recent specials, I mean. Obviously, Killing Him Softly clears everything that he's ever done in the past 6 years. However, at least he's like getting marginally better at making jokes and not simply just saying trans people are awful and demons. Like, at least he's moved beyond doing attack helicopter memes. However, he hasn't moved far beyond it. At least he's trying to make a joke now instead of just like repeating something that you hear from Steven Crowder. But even then, it still falls short of what his normal material looks like. Specifically, his bit about Norm Macdonald is what I want to talk about. I believe this is it.
And the only thing that got me out of that space was a comedian friend of mine, the late, great Norm Macdonald. That's right. Shout out to Norm. And what Norm did, which I'll never forget, is he knew that I was the biggest Jim Carrey fan in the world. Now, I'm not going to go all into it, but Jim Carrey is talented in a way that you can't practice or rehearse. What a God-given talent. I was fascinated with him. And Norm knew that. And he called me up and he goes, Dave, he says, I'm doing a movie with Jim Carrey. Do you want to meet him? And I said, yes, I do. And it was the first time I could remember since my father died being excited. And the movie was called Man on the Moon. I didn't know any of this. And in this movie, Jim Carrey was playing another comedian I admired, the late, great Andy Kaufman. Yes, and Jim Carrey was so immersed in that role that from the moment he woke up to the time he went to bed at night, he would live his life as Andy Kaufman. I didn't know that. When they said cut, this was still Andy Kaufman. So much so that everybody on the crew called him Andy. I didn't know any of that. I just went there to meet him, and when he walked into the room where we were supposed to meet, I screamed, Jim Carrey! And everyone said, no! Call him Andy. And I didn't understand. And then he came over and he was acting weird. I didn't know he was acting like Andy Kaufman. Just like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, hello. Andy? Now, in hindsight, how lucky am I that I got to see one of the greatest artists of my time immersed in one of his most challenging processes ever. Very lucky to have seen that. But as it was happening, I was very disappointed. Because I wanted to meet Jim Carrey, and I had to pretend this was Andy Kaufman all afternoon. And he was clearly Jim Carrey. I could look at him and I could see he was Jim Carrey. Anyway, I say all that to say, that's how trans people make me feel.
So that's a joke. It's crafted as a joke. It's got the structure of a joke. Dave Chappelle is a GOAT of comedy after all. So obviously, it's still, like, at least it's not like what we just showed you earlier about like Israeli attempts at comedy and humor. At least it has the crafting of the making of a joke. However, it's very lowest common denominator because the punchline still is trans people are weird and gross and they're faking it. And, you know, I'm sick and tired of acting like they're not. The punchline in and of itself for this massive crafted story from a profoundly successful storyteller is still just a really shit lowest common denominator meme. You're saying it can only be funny if it's from someone that empathizes? No, I'm not saying that you can only be funny if you empathize with said group. I'm saying that empathy oftentimes helps in developing a better understanding of the group that you are joking about. Because if you don't understand the group that you're joking about, you're just simply looking at it from the outside and going, aren't they weird? They're just weird. That's the difference. That structure that he engaged in from top to bottom, Norm Macdonald to Jim Carrey to Andy Kaufman, all of that has the makings of a decent joke. It has the structure, it has the writing, everything is sound. The punchline, however, is soft. It's predictable and it's soft. You built it up. It's supposed to be the best part of it. The rule of threes, right? If the last piece of that joke falls flat, then you kind of crafted that for no reason. Now, what is really interesting about this in particular with Norm Macdonald is that he invokes Norm Macdonald's name, which is quite odd when he's making a joke about trans people being fake and phony and being weird and gross. Because Norm Macdonald himself was very much alive and doing comedy at a time when people were talking about trans identity in public, right? It was a part of the subject matter. And Norm Macdonald was interviewed. This was a great bit from said interview of Norm Macdonald that I'm going to read now. Terrible tribute to Norm, says Vincent, who touched on this exact type of joke in an interview. I think the ambivalence had more to do with jokes you've made about transgender people. Now remember, a lot of people who post Norm Macdonald on Twitter, Norm Avatar Twitter accounts are oftentimes the dumbest right-wingers you've ever seen, and plenty of people will just go, you just don't get it. Norm Macdonald was a super reactionary guy. Now, just like with every artist from every different industry, you're not going to like all their work. Norm Macdonald has a lot of hits, some misses, in my opinion. Doesn't really matter, right? But here's what he had to say about a joke that he cut out of his special. Yeah, the other thing was a joke about Caitlyn Jenner, which, as a matter of fact, was a joke I deliberately left out of the Netflix special, Norm says. It wasn't much of a joke, really, and it's weird when you have to explain jokes that aren't that funny. The joke was about how everyone was saying Caitlyn Jenner is beautiful, but she's not really beautiful. In that joke, I went to great lengths to say you should love Caitlyn Jenner and accept her, but you don't have to pretend she's beautiful. There's no reason to do that. That was the entire point of the joke, he says, which is still a better joke than anything that Dave Chappelle has crafted about trans people. Like, the idea is like there's affirming trans identity and saying that trans women are women. And then there is the notion of taking it one step further. One is normal and perfectly valid. The other is like supporting delusion, kind of like that. Now, having said that, he still considered that to be not a good enough joke. He said it was pretty weak. That was the entire point of the joke. It was pretty weak. So I won't do those jokes anymore, which is fine, because the reason I didn't do the joke on the special is because I came to an understanding that other people came to much sooner than I did. Which is what the interviewer asks. He says, which is that a lot of people are idiots. You don't want to have a joke be misunderstood and then someone goes and beats up a trans person. And that doesn't mean that you can't make jokes about trans people at all. I myself make jokes about trans people all the time. The difference is Norm in this regard was saying, at least that was recognizing that he didn't fully grasp the concept, but he did grasp the secondary impact of his words, that it plays a role in normalizing transphobic sentiment. And because he didn't have a good enough joke about a trans woman in that regard, he just dropped it because he thought, why do this? I don't understand this attitude towards comedy, that comedy should be scrutinized exclusively on how funny it is. Surely there can be funny jokes that we should still denounce because they're harmful. My friend, that's precisely what I'm saying. A lot of people tune out whenever I talk about Dave Chappelle or comedy in general, but I am the #1 defender of comedy in general, and I will duke it out with my chat on a regular basis, and I will take it to the most neurodivergent lengths to describe to you sentence crafting, joke crafting, how to write a joke, and why something is funny or what the main intention is. So when I'm actually criticizing Dave Chappelle, I'm not criticizing him from the perspective of oh, he's transphobic and I'm triggered. Oh, it makes me so mad. I, after all, am a cisgender dude. I'm a white guy, a cishet white guy. None of that impacts me directly. I can hear someone be transphobic and recognize the harm in that, but it's not directly harming me. It's not affecting me personally. I have the capacity to hear it and go, yeah, that's transphobic. When I criticize Dave Chappelle, it's not from the framework that he is transphobic. He is. We all understand that. There's no reason to defend it. I don't know why some people try to. It's like, who are you trying to appeal to? Liberals? Do you care? Do you care about liberals being no, Dave Chappelle has to be perceived as funny? You're not funny though, Hasan. I'm not. I'm not a chicken, but I know how to make an egg. Mean scrambled egg. I'm not a comedian. I'm an appreciator of comedy. And I am a big fan of Dave Chappelle. What I'm trying to say is, as a big fan of Dave Chappelle, when I criticize Dave Chappelle, it's not on the basis of oh, he's being so rude. It's on the basis that it's hacky. And I think that's the worst thing you can do as a comedian. You're a football player and you beat your wife in an elevator. If you can run real fast, catch a football real good, people are going to overlook even the criminal things that you do. Same goes for comedy. You're an artist. You're a comedic talent. You're going to be able to get away with a lot of awful stuff that you do in your real world life and maybe even in your stand-up specials. However, The worst thing you can do as a comedian is no longer be funny. And the easiest way to no longer be funny is by looking for applause rather than laughter. And when you go for the lowest common denominator, bottom of the barrel, hacky bits, saying, don't we all feel like trans people are just weird and gross? That's what you're doing. You're looking for applause. And I expect more from my former GOAT. Wait, what? My biggest criticisms I have of you on comedy is that you, like a lot of us, have a limited lexicon. If you think the TED Talk style Hannah Gadsby started with her and not Carlin, Poundstone, Kinison, among other greats, I would implore you to look more at comedy. No. George Carlin or Poundstone, I'm unfamiliar with, or Kinison doing TED Talk style is incorrect. It's just not the same. George Carlin was not seeking out applause. You can't go for applause-seeking bits in a broader American population if you're tackling an issue from a leftist framework regardless. Because applause-seeking oftentimes has to be done within a liberal framework or a reactionary framework. Nanette being the liberal example and Dave Chappelle's trans stuff being a reactionary example. Now, what I mean by that is this. Applause requires the audience to recognize the pre-established norms. George Carlin, when talking about like the Israelis are called commandos and the Palestinians are called terrorists, that in and of itself is not simply looking for an applause. It's showcasing something that is happening in front of you and sometimes exaggerating or sometimes showing that juxtaposition in a humorous way. Nanette's special in general was anti-comedy. It wasn't created with any kind of like laughter at all, with laughter in mind at all. Like Norm, Dave is a childhood hero of mine, and I can speak for hours on amazing work he did. And if you think of stand-up as a complete art form that's more than just the written jokes, he's maybe still the best alive. So this stuff just makes me genuinely sad at this point. I agree with this 100% wholeheartedly because he's still so charismatic and such a good storyteller. It's like seeing one of the best baseball players, right? It's like seeing Ohtani try to play like high school softball and whiffing. It's like, how did this happen? Like, what are you doing? It's a very well-written joke in a technical sense, although you see the punchline a mile away and is delivered flawlessly, but it's about as far from funny as you can get. It's like seeing the modern Rolling Stones. They still play well and everything, but the spark died a long time ago. Obviously, he will never fall off because he's Dave Chappelle. You've got the I liked him when I was a kid bias, bro, grow up. No, dude. I love comedy. I think comedy is very important. I think comedy is great. It's like one of the few forms of art that I consume on a regular basis. I care about it quite a bit. I don't like it when people are constantly chirping about it, especially when it's mostly unfunny people who don't care about humor at all, who don't understand it, and don't want anyone to listen to jokes in general. This is part of the reason why I regularly yell at my chat whenever they go, what, that joke, I didn't understand it, which means it's bad and wrong, and you shouldn't laugh at it either. There's two different types of people who are currently yelling at me in the chat. Some who are saying Dave Chappelle is transphobic and therefore has never crafted a good joke and will never be able to craft a good joke, and all of his jokes are bad. And even the crafting, the structure of a joke or the storytelling aspect of it is also bad, which is not true. From my perspective, this is simply not true. And then there are other chatters who are saying, you didn't laugh at the Dave Chappelle special, you hate comedy and you're policing comedy. No, I'm not. I am a believer, a firm believer that you can make jokes about anything. It's just that it's almost like the thing I talk about all the time with respect to accents. Accents of people who have been historically colonized. You can do it. You just have to be really good at it. Because if you're not really good at it, then it's going to be very racist and people are going to yell at you. That's it. And the same thing goes for trans people. Like, there is hilarity and humor in the concept of being trans, growing up trans, like the way society perceives you. There is definitely things that are funny about the culture that has been built around it. I make jokes about trans people all the time. The difference is it is not at the expense of trans people, and it's not usually looking at it from the outside, looking in and going, you're weird and gross and you're fake and you're not real and you're doing something I don't like and it's immoral. That's the difference. Someone said slurs. There's a reason why certain people can say certain slurs and it can be totally okay and funny. Here, a great example of this is one of the most banger consistent segments on SNL on the Weekend Update is the Michael Che, Colin Jost joke swap. If Colin Jost is writing jokes about black people in and of itself and saying things that he's like saying there and he's written it himself, it would not be perceived in the same way when Michael Che is the one who wrote it, is sitting next to him, and the expectation is that he reads those jokes out loud and maybe even bring like a black civil rights leader or something to sit there and hear him say it. That's where the joke comes from. That's what is a modifier. That's what makes it both permissible and funny. By the way, she wasn't a real civil rights leader, Lamont. I don't know who that person was. I'm just saying that it was presented as a civil rights leader. So that is a great example of like one thing in other contexts, in certain contexts being like weird and not funny, and in other contexts being actually hilarious. Black trans chatter. I grew up on Chappelle and loved his show and early specials on Netflix. Even during BLM, he had much more nuanced perspective when talking about George Floyd and the experiences of black man in America. It's why it sucks so much now that he's taking such a hit, because of that empathy/understanding can't be extended to another marginalized community. Yeah. And I think a lot of people get stuck on the language that we're using when we're criticizing and think it's simply about Dave Chappelle not being empathetic and him being reactionary and hurting people's feelings. That's not it at all. Empathy simply allows you to understand an in-group better so you can craft jokes that are humorous instead of just looking at it from the outside. But as a leftist, you can't find a joke that's at the expense of trans folk funny because you know the harm it causes, everything, even though it might be a good joke. No, that's not it at all. I can not only separate the art from the artist, but I can also separate the art from its impact when looking at it. I even said in his last special, the Beyond Pussy one was a banger. When he talks about trans women saying it's beyond meat, it's pussy too. Like that, in and of itself, standalone, is a banger joke. The problem, however, is that it's sandwiched between him being like, I'm transphobic, by the way. I hate trans people, by the way. TERFs are right, by the way. And then it's like, well, all of a sudden, you got good meat in the sandwich, but the bread is stale and moldy. You can't have that sandwich. It's not, it's just like you ruin the rest of the sandwich. There's another bit that someone sent me. I don't know which one it was. Let me see if I can find it real quick. No, it was the one where he's like, I'm gonna go and do in prison. If I was in California, I'd join the woman's prison, and I would say I'm a woman. And it's just like, again, it's just like that's Steven Crowder, dude. That's a Steven Crowder bit.
Go to jail, but if I do, I hope it's in California. Because as soon as the judge sentences me, I'll be like, Your Honor, before you sentence me, I just went to court to know I identify as a woman. Send me to women's jail. And as soon as I get in there, you know what I'm gonna be doing? Give me a fruit cocktail, bitch, before I knock your motherfucking teeth out. I'm a girl just like you, bitch. Come over here and suck this girl dick I got. Don't make me explain myself. I'm a girl. God forbid I ever go to jail. But if I do.
Let me tell you, dude, it's just sad. It's sad to see. No, everybody jumping on, oh God, everyone is missing the point. There's so many people that are just like saying like, oh, he's saying he wants to beat women and them or whatever. And it's like, dude, you can make edgy jokes. Doesn't mean that he's like a literal piss woman beater. The difference is it's just such a hacky, basic bit. That's what it is. Oh my God. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There was a point where I think he recognized personally that this was like suffering his content, but because he keeps getting millions and millions of dollars, and because like he'll still always forever permanently sell out audiences, it's never gonna stop. I think he's just too lost in the weeds. If you love your trans chatters, you will move on. Okay, here's another great example of this from another hack, right? An absolute hack. Here.
Sleek and stylish in this wool blend, Najiba is hot, hot, hot. Ah, here's lovely Nima in a coquettish little outfit that showcases the girl inside the woman, inside the stifling female containment unit. It's first-class clothing for second-class citizens.
Like, come on, dog. Really? Dude, it's so good, man. He's popping off, folks. This guy is funny, okay? That's what I'm thinking.
And it shows off your curves in all the right places. The top of your head, your shoulders, and absolutely nowhere else. Dress it up for morning prayers, or dress it down for midnight stonings. This one says, my mullah brings all the boys to the yard. Oh, isn't Khalila just scrumptious in this business?
How is critiquing Islam bad? Islam is yes, brother. You've already done it. You've already jumped on the bandwagon. This is such a classic post 9/11 joke of just being like, Yeah, look at these barbaric Muslims and look at the way they cover their women. They forcibly cover their women. And it's like, my boss is a Saudi woman. She's a doctor in chemistry and wears Doctor Who t-shirts. Yeah, it is Islamophobia masquerading as a criticism of a religion in general, when in fact, it's just pure, unfiltered, unadulterated Islamophobia. This is exactly the same energy as the Dave Chappelle stuff. Do you think there isn't humor in Islam? Of course there is. There are a million different things that you can make fun of. Something I regularly bring up is the idea that Muslims, for example, will do cocaine even and drink alcohol, but God forbid you touch pork. That is haram. Oh, never. I would never eat pork. Come on, brother. We would never do that. There are so many variants. There are so many things that you can make fun of within the Muslim world, within Islam in general. This is hack.
This casual abaya by Donna the Quran. It's a throwback pullover that says, I'm too sexy for my Shiite. You'll be proud.
Some chatters said you were being the joke police. No, it's because chatters also agree with Bill Maher on this. That's the difference. That's it. Because you agree with him. That's why you think it's funny, but you're not necessarily laughing at it because you've heard this a million times. You've heard this joke a million times. I mean, you heard it twice in the same 1 minute span. How can chatters go, ugh, SNL sucks, dick, and then turn around and go, but this is peak? Yes. It's the difference between back to the kitchen jokes and a well-crafted joke about misogyny or sexism. That's exactly it. That is the meme. Chatters are very quick to go, Jeff Dunham sucks, but then watch another dude make the Ahmed the Dead Terrorist memes and go, that's hilarious, that's peak humor. And the funniest thing overall is that it's not only peak humor for chatters, but they also defend it. It's peak humor because it's morally righteous, because it's only critiquing Islam. Come on, it's just critiquing Islam. And notice how, as someone from a Muslim background, I'm not talking about the dehumanization aspect here, and I'm not talking about like what this does as far as like promoting Islamophobia and the death and destruction that befalls the Muslim world in the hands of American imperialism. For the trans chatters that are listening, I'm simply critiquing it on how hack it is. And that's the same thing that I do for Dave Chappelle as well. There are ways that you can make jokes about Islam. There are ways that you can make jokes about trans people in general that can hit. There is something that's funny in every aspect of our existence.
Steps behind your husband in this ensemble. It's also perfect for when you don't feel like leaving the house, because if you do, you'll be beaten. Available at Kmart by Isaac Jihadi. And finally, here comes lovely Anon. Anon is wearing a daring French cut with a plunging eye slit. Slut. This one comes.
The key to edgy humor is that it makes you laugh at something you disagree with or know you shouldn't laugh at. If you're going to hit on touchy subjects, it better be something that anyone with a sense of humor can admit is funny. Exactly. Wait, why are you not upset about its dehumanizing nature? I agree with the hacky bit, by the way. Because the dehumanizing nature of this comedy, just like every other comedy special, just like every other person who's trying to make a joke, stems from the material conditions that they're simply reflecting on the ground. That's it. I don't care about it as much as I care about the real tangible aspects and not simply someone who's unfunny, desperately trying to be funny.
Comes in black and dark black. And it's guaranteed to get your man so hot, he'll want to crack you on the ankle with a long stick. Whether you're on the go or simply knowing your place, nobody does repression like Muslim Dior. By the way, Anon is the winner of Saudi Arabia's Next Top Model, and I think you can see why.
Damn, dude. Banger. I want to join Weasel News, actually. You should twat out your reporting. Working on a story. Sex work in Los Santos. Are the terms of service too restrictive? I've lost almost my life.
So who got hit by a tow truck?
I've lost my job prospects. Are you towing my van? What is to be done? But the news never stops. City is absolute garbage.